perspective. You're not allowed to question. Don't question. Whatever I say, take. Right, wrong, doesn't understand, you don't comprehend it, doesn't matter, take it. As in when ISIS was caught, this is one of the narrations. From a first-hand perspective, primary source, he says, I was in the jails. When we capture the people from ISIS, we put them in these jails, we feed them, we clothe them, but they would not speak to us. Why? We're taking care of you. They said they would not speak to any one of the followers of Ahl al-Bayt. He says, what's going on? Why don't you speak to us? One of them spoke out once. What did he say? He said, well, the reason why we don't speak towards the followers of Ahl al-Bayt is we've been taught a particular tradition. He says, what's this tradition? He says, if you speak to a follower, if you speak, terrorism. If you speak to a follower of Ahl al-Bayt, you have to fast 3 days because you become impure. Take that into account. When people are bombarding you and telling you and making you afraid and intimidating you in an aspect where you're not allowed to question, you take everything that you are given. How can we say that this isn't terrorism? That's why it comes into perspective that the first aspect, when we may overlook the aspect of freedom, is when someone else tells us how to think, how to move, how to react. As in, of course, you can listen to scholars, but not once did a scholar come and says, well, this is Islam and you have to do it whether you like it or not. No. The Quran says, لا إكراه في الدين. You do not force someone into religion. But we see forceful behavior left, right and center. Give you another example. Abu Huraira once. There's a tradition that Abu Huraira comes and he goes towards Ruqayya, which was one of the girls, as they say, was the daughters of the Prophet. We don't believe that she was the daughter of the Prophet. She was a Rabiba, which was the daughter of Khadija's sister, which was raised in the house of the Prophet. The narration said, look at this narration. Ruqayya dies 2 years after Hijrah. 2 years after Hijrah, Ruqayya dies. Abu Huraira comes to Islam 7 years after Hijrah. Let's look at this aspect. Ruqayya dies 2 years after Hijrah. Abu Huraira becomes a Muslim 7 years after Hijrah. 5-year gap between the death of Ruqayya and between what? The Islam of Abu Huraira. There's a tradition that says, and a long tradition, saying the merits of the third Khalifa based on a conversation that Abu Huraira had with Ruqayya. Someone comes and says, well, how did they meet if she was dead and he wasn't even a Muslim at the time? We want to question it. Don't question. Take. That's why the school of Islam comes. The school of Ahlul Bayt teaches us, keep your foundations strong. Keep your basis strong. Learn. When we come to commemorate Imam Hussein, he died. So we remember the true Islam. Islam was at a stage. Can you imagine that they would chase from one country to another the grandson of the Holy Prophet? The grandson of the Holy Prophet, the Prophet that brought this religion, they chased him from one place to another, thinking that by killing him they would attain high rank. That's when the aspect of terrorism comes in. This is how you should think. Do not question. Ahlul Bayt come and say, no, question every movement and make sure that every single act that you do is in the right path. Every single act that you do has been already treaded by the Ahlul Bayt. You are only following in their footsteps. Only following in their footsteps. There's many other narrations. When we find this aspect of intimidation, Sayyid al-Fali has a beautiful story. When he narrates in the time of Saddam, in the time of Saddam, there was a Sayyid, gets up on the pulpit, and he says these particular verses from the Holy Quran. He says, Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab. The same night, the guards of Saddam come and drag this particular Sayyid all the way towards their courts. What's going on? He begins to ask, what's going on? So the guards begin to ask this Sayyid, says, did you or did you not? Because he was very heavy on the Arab versus Ajam thing. That's what he had, Saddam. He didn't have the aspect of Islam. Inna akramakum andallah atqakum. The best amongst you in the eyes of Allah are the most God conscious or the most pious. He comes to this Sayyid, the guards, they said, did you or did you not curse the Arabs on your pulpit tonight? He says, hold on, what do you mean? I've cursed the Arabs on the pulpit of Imam Hussein. He says, yes. How have I cursed the Arabs on the pulpit of Imam Hussein? He says, did you or did you not say, Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab? He says, of course, I've said that. He says, is Abu Lahab an Arab or not an Arab? He says, he's an Arab, he's from Quraysh. He says, therefore you've cursed the Arabs. Did you see the aspect? How they twist the words, how they make what they want to be the right path, the right path. They twist anything in a manner in which they can prosecute you. That Sayyid was taken because he said a verse from the Holy Quran and executed. Is that or is not intimidation? Because they think that one person, if they take him away, they would intimidate the followers that follow in his footsteps. How many times do we see terrorism in the times of the Khalifas, one after another? Times when the ziyarah of Imam Hussein was forbidden. A time which they used to cut off their hands. You had to give up a limb to go towards the ziyarah of Imam Hussein. In a time where the zawar of Imam Hussein was a numerical factor that can be counted. Because they used to cut off their hands. People would come the next year, cut off the next hand, cut off their legs. Some would take their eyeballs out because there's no other limbs to cut off. And that's why we have the famous tradition, لو قطعوا أرجلنا واليدين نأتيك سحفا سيدي يا حسين. I think on that we need a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.